You think you can walk onto a private jet dressed like that and nobody's gonna question you?
The problem isn't that you questioned me, it's why.
Melissa, stop. She's cleared for the flight.
Either she gets off this aircraft right now, or I make her.
The slap hadn't happened yet, but somehow the tension in the air already felt like it had. A quiet tarmac in Santa Barbara. Early morning light stretched thin across polished metal and tinted glass. The private jet sat still, silent, expensive in a way that didn't need to prove itself. Engines off, cabin ready, crew in position, everything controlled, everything precise, until she showed up. No escort, no designer luggage, no urgency in her walk. Dr. Evelyn Carter moved across the concrete like she had all the time in the world. 38. Hoodie pulled slightly over her head. Faded grey. Black joggers. Scuffed sneakers that had seen too many sidewalks and not enough admiration. Her phone rested loosely in her hand, thumb scrolling, eyes half-focused. Not distracted, just uninterested. To anyone watching, she didn't belong. And people were watching. Inside the cabin, Melissa Grant noticed her before anyone else did. 45. 20 years in aviation. Posture sharp. Eyes sharper. The kind of woman who believed experience was a form of authority no one could question. She leaned slightly toward the cockpit, voice low but edged. Did ops clear someone last minute? The CO pilot didn't even turn fully. Not that I'm aware of. Melissa's gaze returned to the woman, stepping onto the aircraft. There was a pause. Small, but heavy. Evelyn didn't hesitate at the door. No glance around. No moment of uncertainty. Just a quiet step forward. Like muscle memory guiding her feet. Like she'd done this before. Many times. That bothered Melissa. She moved down the aisle before Evelyn could get far. Smile on. Tight. Controlled. The kind of smile that wasn't really a welcome. More like a warning, wrapped in politeness. "Ma'am," she said, voice smooth, just loud enough to be heard. "This flight is a private charter." Evelyn didn't stop immediately. One more step. Then another. Then she looked up. Slow. Measured. Her eyes met Melissa's without flinching. "I know." 2 words. Calm. Flat. Final. Something in Melissa's chest tightened. "I don't think you do," she replied, the smile thinning. "This is a restricted manifest. We don't have any record of—" "I'm on it." Evelyn slipped her phone into her hoodie pocket. Her movements were unhurried, deliberate, like she wasn't being questioned. Like this moment was beneath her attention. Behind them, a younger voice cut through. Melissa." Jake Reynolds leaned halfway out from the galley, tablet in hand. 26. Still new enough to second-guess himself, but not blind enough to ignore what he was seeing. "She's listed," he said, scrolling quickly. Top of the manifest. Silence. Not loud, not dramatic, just a shift. Subtle, but real. Melissa's expression didn't change right away, but something flickered behind her eyes. Doubt, irritation. Something else she didn't want to name. Evelyn didn't wait. She stepped past her. No apology, no attitude, just movement. Her shoulder brushed the air between them, and somehow that felt louder than any argument. She reached her seat, lifted her carry-on into the overhead with ease, then lowered herself into the cream leather like it belonged to her, like everything here did. Legs crossed. Back relaxed. Phone back in hand. Done. Melissa turned slowly, watching her. From the outside, it looked like nothing. From the inside, it felt like something slipping. She adjusted her jacket, smoothed it down. A small gesture, but sharp. Controlled. Reclaiming something invisible. Then she leaned toward Jake, voice barely above a whisper. Something's off. Jake hesitated, looked at Evelyn, then back at Melissa. She's cleared, he said quietly. Ground confirmed. Melissa's jaw tightened. Her eyes drifted again to the hoodie. The sneakers, the calm. That didn't add up. Not here, not on this aircraft, not in her cabin. And somewhere deep inside, beneath training and protocol and years of routine, something older spoke louder. People like that don't end up here. Her decision wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. But it had already been made. Melissa didn't sit down. She couldn't. Something about the way Evelyn Carter had taken that seat, without hesitation, without permission, without even looking around, kept pressing against her chest like a slow, tightening grip. It wasn't just unusual. It was wrong. It disrupted the order she trusted. The quiet hierarchy she had built her entire career on. She turned back down the aisle. Evelyn was already settled in, head slightly tilted, eyes on her phone, thumb moving in smooth, steady motions. No tension in her shoulders, no awareness of the room. Or worse, complete awareness and absolute indifference. Melissa stopped beside her seat. "Ma'am?" she said again, this time without the soft edge. "I'm going to need to verify your identification." Evelyn didn't look up right away. 1 second. 2. Then her eyes lifted, slow, controlled. Not annoyed. Not confused. Just present. "Is there a reason you're asking me twice?" she asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Clean. Precise. Like it had already measured the room before speaking. Melissa felt the shift. Small, but enough. A couple seated toward the back lowered their newspapers slightly, not fully. Just enough to watch without being obvious. "Standard protocol," Melissa replied, straighter now, firmer. "We verify all passengers on private charters." Evelyn's gaze held hers. Steady, unblinking. "No," she said quietly. "You don't." The words landed harder than they should have. Melissa's fingers tightened slightly at her sides. "Excuse me. I've flown with this company more times this year than you've probably worked this route," Evelyn continued, tone still even, almost detached. "No one's ever asked me twice." Jake shifted in the galley. He could feel it now. The line, invisible, but crossed. "Melissa," he called, trying to keep it light. "We're good. Everything's cleared. Let's just get ready for departure." She didn't move. Didn't look at him. Her attention stayed locked on Evelyn, like backing down now would mean losing something she couldn't afford to lose. "This is a high-security flight," Melissa said, voice lowering. "We don't allow inconsistencies." Evelyn's brow lifted, just slightly. "Inconsistencies." A pause. Then softer, sharper. You mean my clothes? Melissa inhaled. Slow, controlled. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Silence pressed into the space between them. Thick, heavy. The kind that made people hold their breath without realizing it. Melissa leaned in a fraction closer. I don't know who you think you are, she said, the politeness gone now, stripped clean. But this kind of entitlement doesn't fly here. That word hung there. Entitlement. Evelyn's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. Not anger, not hurt, recognition. She stood, slowly, and when she did, the difference in height shifted the dynamic instantly. Just enough, just subtle enough to matter. I didn't think I was anybody, Evelyn said. Calm. Direct. You did. Jake stepped forward now, urgency breaking through. Okay, that's enough. We're not doing this. Melissa, we're on a schedule. But Melissa barely registered him. Her focus had narrowed. Tunnel vision. The kind that filters out reason, training, consequence. You can either show me who you really are, she said, voice tight, or you can step off this aircraft while we sort it out. The words were a line drawn in concrete. Evelyn looked at her for a long moment. Then quietly, I'm already exactly who I am. That should have ended it. It didn't. Melissa reached out, not violently. Not yet. But firm. Her hand closing around Evelyn's arm, fingers pressing just enough to assert control. To move her, to correct the situation. Evelyn's body reacted instantly. She pulled back. Smooth, controlled, but unmistakable. Don't touch me. The air snapped. Jake froze mid-step. The couple in the back stopped pretending not to watch. For a split second, everything balanced on a knife's edge. And then Melissa took one more step forward. Her voice dropped, sharp, brittle. I'm not doing this today. Her hand moved again. Faster. And somewhere deep inside that moment, the line between authority and aggression disappeared completely. The sound cracked through the cabin before anyone could process the movement. A sharp, clean impact. Skin against skin. Final. Evelyn's head turned slightly with it, just a few inches, just enough for the force to register. Her hair shifted. A loose strand fell across her cheek. Then stillness. No scream. No gasp from her. Only the echo of that single moment, hanging in the air like something alive. Jake's breath caught first. What the hell are you doing? His voice broke the silence, but it didn't dissolve it. It only made it heavier. Melissa stood there, arm still slightly raised, fingers trembling now. The reality of what she'd done arriving slower than the action itself. Her chest rose quickly, uneven. For a second, she looked almost confused, like she hadn't expected it to go that far. She... Melissa stammered, trying to grab onto something that made sense. She was refusing to comply. No one moved. The older man in the back lowered his newspaper completely now, his hands no longer steady. His wife leaned forward, eyes wide, lips pressed tight like she didn't trust herself to speak. Jake stepped between them, placing himself squarely in front of Evelyn without taking his eyes off Melissa. You just assaulted a passenger. The word landed hard. Assaulted. Melissa blinked. She was being disruptive. No, Jake snapped, sharper now, louder. She wasn't. Behind him, Evelyn hadn't moved. Her hand rose slowly to her cheek. Not dramatic, not reactive, just checking, feeling the heat blooming under her skin. The sting was real, immediate. But it wasn't what held her still. It was something else. Something colder. Something older. She lowered her hand. Her face turned back to center, and when her eyes lifted again, the room shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but everyone felt it. Jake noticed it first. The change. The way the air around her seemed to tighten, like gravity had subtly increased. Melissa saw it too, though she couldn't name it. Her shoulders stiffened, instinctively bracing against something she didn't understand. "What?" she demanded, defensive now, voice cracking at the edges. "What are you looking at me like that for?" Evelyn didn't answer. That silence stretched longer than any argument could have. Jake turned his head slightly, lowering his voice, almost careful now. "Do you know who this is?" Melissa scoffed, but it came out thin, forced. "I don't care who she thinks she is." Jake shook his head slowly, disbelief settling into his expression. "No, you really don't." He took a breath, steadying himself, choosing his words. "This is Dr. Evelyn Carter." The name landed softly. No reaction from Melissa. Not yet. Jake continued, each word more deliberate than the last. "CEO of Nova Aerospace. PhD in aerospace engineering. Net worth over $2 billion. Majority stakeholder in Meridian Lux Aviation." The last part hung there. Not loud, but irreversible. Melissa's face drained, color leaving so fast it was almost visible. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Her eyes flicked to Evelyn, then away, then back again like she was trying to reassemble reality and failing. That's not," she started, but the sentence collapsed under its own weight. Jake didn't look at her anymore. He couldn't. "You just laid hands on the person who owns the company that signs your paycheck," he said, quieter now, but somehow heavier. The cabin didn't breathe. The couple in the back exchanged a look that said everything words couldn't carry. The kind of look people share when something irreversible has just happened in front of them. Melissa took a step back, then another. Her hands dropped to her sides, fingers curling slightly like she needed something to hold on to, and found nothing. "No," she whispered, barely audible. "No, that's not possible." Evelyn finally moved, not toward her, not away from her, just forward. One small step past the moment, past the confrontation, past the noise. She walked back to her seat, calm, measured, untouched in the way that mattered. She sat down slowly, smoothing the fabric of her hoodie like nothing had happened. Like this was just another interruption in a day already too long. Her phone came back into her hand. The screen lit her face faintly. Ordinary. Almost painfully ordinary. Jake stood frozen, still trying to process how fast everything had changed. Melissa didn't move at all, because in that moment she understood something with terrifying clarity. The slap had already happened, and there was no version of reality where she could take it back. No one told her to sit down, but Evelyn did anyway. The motion was slow, deliberate, almost surgical in its precision. She lowered herself into the seat like she was placing a final period at the end of a sentence no one else had finished reading. Her fingers adjusted the cuff of her sleeve. A small detail. controlled, intentional. The mark on her cheek had already begun to darken. Jake saw it. He couldn't stop seeing it. His mouth opened, then closed again. Words lined up and collapsed before they could leave. Training said de-escalate. Protocol said report. Instinct said something much louder. "Dr. Carter," he started, voice careful now, stripped of everything casual. "I'm so sorry. This shouldn't have." Evelyn raised one finger. Not sharply, not aggressively, just enough. He stopped. Her eyes stayed on her phone, but her attention was no longer there. It had shifted somewhere deeper, somewhere colder, the kind of place where decisions were made without noise. "Close the cabin door," she said. Quiet, level. Not a request. Jake blinked. We haven't completed boarding checks yet." "Close it." 2 words, no rise in tone, no urgency, just certainty. Something in Jake's spine straightened automatically. He nodded before realizing he had. "Yeah, okay." He turned quickly, signaling to the ground crew through the narrow opening. A few confused glances came back at him, but they followed through. The hydraulic hum filled the cabin as the door sealed shut with a heavy, final click. The sound echoed. Not loud, but absolute. Melissa flinched. She hadn't moved since Evelyn sat down. Her body remained in the aisle, caught between action and consequence. Her eyes flicked toward the closed door, then back to Evelyn, then to Jake. "You can't just," she started, voice thin now, losing its edge. "We have procedures. We have to." "You're done," Jake said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Melissa stared at him, stunned. "Excuse me." "You're done," he repeated, slower this time. "Step back. Right now." For a moment, something old and stubborn rose in her expression. Years of authority, habit, control, the instinct to push back. Then it cracked. Not all at once, just enough. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. Her eyes lost focus, like she was finally seeing the situation from outside herself. "I didn't know," she said, barely above a whisper. "I didn't know who she was." Evelyn's thumb stopped moving on her screen. Silence pressed in again. Then, without looking up, she spoke. "That's the problem." Melissa's breath caught. Evelyn continued. Still calm, still distant, like she was speaking to something larger than the woman standing in the aisle. "You needed to know who I was, to decide how to treat me." Each word landed clean, measured, unavoidable. "That's not a mistake," Evelyn said. "That's a system." Jake exhaled slowly, the weight of it settling into his chest. The couple in the back sat completely still now, not even pretending to look away. They were witnesses, not just to an incident, but to something that felt bigger than a single flight, a single morning. Melissa shook her head, quick, desperate. "No, that's not what this is. I was just doing my job. I was trying to keep the flight secure. Anyone in that position would have—" "No," Evelyn said softly. And for the first time, she looked up directly at her. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rage. It was worse. Clarity. "Not anyone," she said. Melissa's throat tightened. Her hands curled into fists at her sides, then loosened again, like she couldn't decide whether to hold on or let go. "I can fix this," she rushed, stepping forward without thinking. "We can fix this. I'll file a report. Don't." The word stopped her mid-step. Evelyn leaned back slightly in her seat, finally giving her full attention. "There is no version of this where you fix it," she said. "No emotion, no hesitation, just truth." Jake looked between them, the air thick enough to feel against his skin. Outside, the runway stretched empty. Still waiting. Inside, everything had already moved past the point of waiting, and Melissa knew it, because in that moment, she realized something that hadn't fully formed until now. This wasn't about a passenger anymore. This wasn't about a mistake. This was about consequence, and it had already begun. Melissa's mouth opened again, but nothing came out. The words were there. Apologies, explanations, excuses. All of them crowding at the back of her throat, fighting for space. But none of them felt strong enough to survive the silence in front of her. Evelyn had already taken the air out of the room. Jake shifted his weight, glancing toward the cockpit, then back to Evelyn. "We should notify the captain," he said carefully, like each word had to pass inspection before being spoken. Evelyn didn't respond immediately. Her eyes returned to her phone, but the screen had gone dark. She wasn't reading. She wasn't scrolling. She was thinking, calculating. Then she tapped once, the screen lighting up again, her reflection faint in the glass. "Do it," she said. Jake nodded quickly, almost relieved to have direction. He turned and disappeared into the cockpit, the door closing behind him with a soft but final click. Melissa stood alone in the aisle now. The space around her felt different, wider, colder. The authority she had worn like a uniform minutes ago had slipped off, leaving something raw underneath. Her hands trembled just slightly. Enough for her to notice. Enough for her to hate it. "I've been doing this for 20 years, she said suddenly, her voice quieter, less certain. "I've handled emergencies, real ones, medical situations, security threats, passengers out of control. I know how to read people." Evelyn didn't look up. "And what did you read?" she asked. The question landed like a blade. Melissa swallowed. "I thought you didn't belong here." There it was. No more layers, no more polished language. Just truth. Evelyn nodded once, almost to herself. Exactly. A long pause followed. Not empty. Heavy. Melissa took a step closer, slower this time, cautious, like approaching something fragile, but dangerous. "You have to understand, this environment, it's different. We're trained to look for inconsistencies. Behavior, appearance, anything that stands out." Evelyn finally looked up again, and I stood out. "Yes," Melissa admitted, the word tight, reluctant, but honest. "Because of what?" Evelyn asked. Melissa hesitated. "Too long." Evelyn watched her, not blinking, not rushing, letting the silence stretch until it forced the answer out. "My clothes," Melissa said. "And?" Another pause. "My demeanor." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "My demeanor." Melissa nodded quickly, clinging to it. "You were too calm. Most people, if they're questioned, they react. They get defensive. You didn't. It felt off." Evelyn's lips pressed together briefly. Not quite a smile, not quite anything warm. "So I was too calm to belong," she said. Melissa didn't answer, because there was nothing left to defend. Evelyn leaned back in her seat again, her gaze drifting past Melissa, past the aisle, toward something only she could see. "Do you know how many rooms I've walked into where I didn't belong?" she said quietly. Melissa's eyes flickered. Evelyn continued, her voice steady, almost reflective now, but every word still sharp. "Boardrooms, labs, investment meetings, places where I was the only one who looked like me, the only one who didn't fit the picture they had in their heads." Jake's voice muffled through the cockpit door as he spoke to the captain, urgent but controlled. Evelyn didn't look toward it. "I learned something early," she said. "If you react, they use it against you. If you stay calm, they question you. Either way, the problem isn't you." Her eyes returned to Melissa. "It's them." Melissa's chest tightened. She shook her head, quick, defensive again. "That's not fair. You're making this about something bigger than it is." "It is bigger," Evelyn said. "Not louder. Just certain. This isn't about one flight attendant making a bad call. This is about a pattern, a system that tells you who deserves to be here before you even check the facts." The cockpit door opened. Jake stepped out, his face different now, tighter, focused. He glanced at Melissa briefly, then moved toward Evelyn. "The captain's been informed," he said. "He's coming out." Melissa turned toward the cockpit instinctively, a flicker of hope crossing her face. Authority. Someone who could reset this. Someone who could take control. But when she looked back at Evelyn, that hope faded almost immediately. Because Evelyn wasn't waiting. She wasn't worried. She wasn't even tense. She was still. And somehow that stillness carried more power than anything the captain could bring through that door. The cockpit door opened with a soft click, but the presence that stepped out filled the cabin immediately. Captain Daniel Brooks moved with the kind of confidence that came from decades in control. Mid-50s, silver at the temples, uniform crisp, posture exact. The kind of man who had resolved 1,000 problems before they ever reached panic. He took one look at the scene and slowed. Melissa standing in the aisle, pale, rigid. Jake off to the side, shoulders tight. And Evelyn Carter, seated, composed, untouched by the tension that surrounded her, like a storm that refused to land. "What's going on?" Brooks asked, voice even, but firm enough to demand clarity. Jake stepped forward first. "Sir, we have a situation involving a passenger." "Not just a passenger," Melissa cut in quickly, stepping toward the captain, urgency creeping back into her voice. "There was a misunderstanding. I was verifying credentials, and she became uncooperative." Evelyn didn't move, didn't react. But the word uncooperative hung in the air like a weak attempt at rewriting something already witnessed. Jake's jaw tightened. "That's not what happened." Brooks held up a hand. "Not aggressive, just enough to stop the overlap." "One at a time," he said. His eyes shifted to Evelyn. For a brief second, something passed through his expression. Recognition? Uncertainty? It flickered too fast to hold on to. "Ma'am," he said, controlled, respectful, but cautious. "I'm Captain Brooks. I understand there's been some confusion about seating and identification." Evelyn looked at him. Really looked this time. Measured, direct. "There's no confusion," she said. The words were quiet, but they landed heavier than anything else in the room. Brooks paused, a small pause. But enough. He turned slightly toward Melissa. "Explain." Melissa inhaled, pulling herself together, reaching for the version of events she could still control. She boarded without proper verification. Her appearance didn't match the profile for this flight. I followed protocol. She refused to comply. It escalated. Jake let out a short, disbelieving breath. That's not protocol. Brooks glanced at him, then back at Melissa. Did she present a valid boarding confirmation? Melissa hesitated. Too long. Jake answered instead. Yes, she's on the manifest. Top of the list. Cleared by ground. Brooks's gaze sharpened slightly. He looked back at Evelyn. Is that correct? Evelyn didn't blink. It is. Another pause. Brooks shifted his weight subtly, recalibrating. Then why are we here? No one answered immediately, because the real answer didn't fit into procedure. Evelyn spoke first. Because she decided I didn't belong here before she checked anything, she said. No accusation in her tone. Just fact. Melissa's shoulders stiffened. That's not... You said it yourself, Evelyn cut in. Not louder. Just cleaner. My appearance didn't match the profile. Brooks' eyes moved to Melissa again. Slowly. Carefully. Did you say that? Melissa's throat tightened. I was assessing risk. By what standard? Brooks asked. Silence. The question didn't come with anger. That made it worse. Melissa searched for something solid. Experience, she said finally. Brooks held her gaze. Then he looked at Evelyn again, and this time something settled. Not fully, but enough. Dr. Carter, he said. The name landed differently coming from him. Melissa's head turned sharply. Brooks continued, tone shifting, respect threading into it. I wasn't informed you'd be on this flight. Evelyn's expression didn't change. You weren't supposed to be. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. I'm sorry. I didn't need an announcement, she said. I needed an accurate experience. Jake exhaled slowly, understanding dawning. Brooks didn't speak for a moment. Then quieter, more careful. You're evaluating the service. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. Among other things, the realization hit. Not loud, but complete. Brooks straightened almost imperceptibly. The dynamic shifted again. He turned back to Melissa, and for the first time since he stepped into the cabin, his authority sharpened. What happened here wasn't a misunderstanding, he said. Melissa's breath hitched. Captain, You made a judgment before verification, he continued. You escalated physical contact. His eyes dropped briefly to Evelyn's cheek. The mark was undeniable now. A thin line of red, darkening. Brooks's jaw tightened. Did you strike her? He asked. Melissa froze. The question wasn't rhetorical. It demanded truth. Yes, she said, barely audible. The word sealed it. No more interpretation. No more room to adjust. Brooks inhaled once, slow, controlled. When he spoke again, his voice carried something heavier than command. Step away from the aisle, he said. Melissa didn't move. Not because she didn't hear, because she understood. Everything had just shifted beyond her reach, and there was no protocol left to hide behind. Melissa didn't argue this time. Her body moved before her mind caught up, one slow step back, then another, until she was no longer blocking the aisle. The space she left behind felt larger than it should have, like something had been cleared out permanently. Captain Brooks watched her for a second longer, then turned back to Evelyn. The shift in his posture was subtle, but unmistakable. Less command, more calculation. Dr. Carter, he said, quieter now, measured. I need to understand exactly what you want to happen next. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Her gaze moved across the cabin, past Jake, past the couple in the back, who now sat frozen, witnesses who would carry this moment long after the flight ended. Past Melissa, who stood off to the side like a shadow of herself, then back to Brooks. You already understand, she said. Brooks held her eyes. I need to hear it. A pause. Not hesitation. Deliberation. Evelyn leaned forward slightly, resting her forearms on her knees. The movement was small, but it changed the energy in the room, focused it, sharpened it. What happens next, she said, isn't about me. Melissa's head lifted just a fraction, confusion breaking through the fear. Evelyn continued, voice steady, unwavering. It's about whether this company actually stands behind the values it puts in writing. Brooks' expression tightened. Jake looked between them, the weight of the words settling into something larger than the moment. You train your crews to represent a brand, Evelyn went on. Precision, excellence, discretion, respect. Those aren't marketing terms, they're promises. Each word landed clean, controlled, final. And today, she said, her eyes flicking briefly toward Melissa, that promise failed. Melissa's breath caught. I said I was sorry. No one looked at her. Not Brooks, not Jake, not even Evelyn. Because the apology had already expired. Brooks exhaled slowly, absorbing it, his hands clasped behind his back, a habit built over years of maintaining composure in situations that could spiral. This will be documented, he said. Fully. Internal review, disciplinary action. Evelyn shook her head once. No. The word cut through his sentence without force, but with absolute clarity. Brooks paused. No. I'm not interested in a report that gets filed and forgotten, she said. I've read enough of those. Jake shifted slightly. He had too. Evelyn leaned back again, reclaiming stillness. You don't fix something like this with paperwork. Brooks' jaw set. Then what are you asking for? There it was. The question everyone in the cabin felt but couldn't articulate. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. Then calmly, accountability. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Defined. Brooks didn't look away. Be specific. Evelyn's eyes moved once more to Melissa. This time, she held them there. Direct. Unflinching. Melissa felt it like pressure against her chest. Her hands tightened again, fingers curling inward. This wasn't a lapse in judgment, Evelyn said. It was a decision. A series of them. Melissa shook her head quickly, panic rising again. No, I misread the situation. That's all this was. Evelyn didn't blink. You misread a person. Silence. And then you acted on it, Evelyn added. Brooks' voice came in, lower now, controlled. Physical contact is grounds for immediate removal from duty. Melissa's eyes snapped to him. Captain, effective immediately, he continued, not raising his voice, but leaving no space to argue. The words landed like a verdict. Melissa stepped forward instinctively, then stopped herself, like she'd run into something invisible. You're suspending me? Just like that? She asked, her voice breaking. Brooks didn't hesitate. I'm removing you from this flight. The distinction didn't matter. Not anymore. Melissa looked around the cabin, searching for something. Support. Recognition. A version of reality that hadn't shifted beyond her control. She found none. Only silence. Only distance. Only the quiet weight of consequence settling in. Her eyes moved back to Evelyn. For the first time, there was no resistance left in them. Only realization. Evelyn didn't look away, because this wasn't about punishment. It was about something deeper. Something that had been set in motion long before this flight ever existed. And now, finally, it was being seen. Melissa's knees felt weaker than she expected. Not collapsing, not dramatic, just unstable. Like the ground beneath her had shifted half an inch and her body hadn't caught up yet. "I've given everything to this job," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Not loud, not pleading, just raw. 20 years, no incidents, no complaints. I built my reputation on doing things right. No one interrupted her. That almost made it worse. Her eyes moved between Brooks and Evelyn, searching for something that resembled understanding. "You're going to throw all of that away over one mistake." Evelyn's expression didn't change. "Was it one?" she asked. Melissa blinked. The question didn't accuse. It exposed. Yes, Melissa said quickly. Too quickly. This got out of hand. But that's not who I am. Evelyn leaned her head slightly to the side, studying her. Not with anger, with precision. "It is who you were when it mattered," she said. The words landed deeper than anything before. Melissa's lips parted, but nothing came out this time. Because somewhere beneath the panic, beneath the instinct to defend, something else had started to form. Recognition. Not complete, not comfortable. But there. Jake shifted his stance, his voice softer now, almost reluctant. "Melissa, you didn't even check her credentials before you made the call." Melissa turned toward him sharply. "I told you, I was assessing." "You were assuming," Jake said. No edge, no anger, just truth. The couple in the back exchanged another look. The woman's hands were folded tightly in her lap now, knuckles pale. The man shook his head once, slow, like he'd seen something like this before, and hoped he wouldn't again. Melissa saw it. That look. That quiet judgment. It hit harder than anything Brooks had said. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she whispered, almost to herself now. Evelyn's gaze softened. Not with sympathy, with clarity. "Intent doesn't erase impact," she said. Melissa's eyes lifted again, a flicker of desperation returning. "Then what do you want me to say?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. Because that wasn't the point. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her hoodie and pulled out her phone again. The motion was simple, familiar. She unlocked it, tapped once, then turned the screen slightly toward Brooks. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing as he read. A long second passed, then another. Jake leaned in slightly, trying to catch a glimpse, but Brooks' body blocked most of the view. When he finally looked up, something had changed. Not dramatically, but enough. "Is this confirmed?" he asked quietly. Evelyn met his eyes. "It is." Brooks exhaled through his nose, slow, controlled. The kind of breath a man takes when something aligns too clearly to ignore. He nodded once, then turned to Jake. "Get operations on the line," he said. "Now." Jake didn't hesitate. Yes, sir. He moved quickly toward the galley, already pulling out his phone. Melissa watched the exchange, confusion sharpening into something closer to fear. "What is that?" she asked, her voice unsteady. "What did she show you?" Brooks didn't answer her immediately. He looked at Evelyn again, then back at Melissa. And for the first time, there was no buffer left in his tone. "No one told you she was on this flight for a reason," he said. Melissa's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" Evelyn spoke before he could continue. "It means you weren't supposed to prepare for me," she said. The words settled slowly. Too slowly. Melissa shook her head. "I don't understand." Evelyn held her gaze. "You weren't supposed to treat me any differently," she said. "You were supposed to treat me exactly how you treat everyone else." The realization hit. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Melissa's face shifted as it landed. Her voice dropped. This was a test? Evelyn didn't smile, didn't confirm it directly. She didn't need to. Brooks stepped in, finishing the thought with quiet finality. "It was an evaluation," he said. The word echoed, not just through the cabin, through everything. Melissa's hands fell to her sides, her shoulders lowered, and in that moment, the last piece fell into place. This wasn't just about what she did. It was about what she revealed. And now, everyone had seen it. The word evaluation didn't fade. It settled. It pressed into every surface of the cabin, into the leather seats, into the still air, into the silence that no one dared to break too quickly. It changed the meaning of everything that had already happened. Melissa felt it most, not as a concept, as a weight. Her breathing slowed, not because she was calm, but because something inside her had stopped fighting. The resistance was gone. What replaced it was harder to carry. "So this whole time," she said, her voice thin, almost unrecognizable now. "You were watching." Evelyn didn't correct her. "I was experiencing," she said. The distinction mattered. Melissa swallowed. Her eyes dropped for a moment, then lifted again, searching for something to hold on to. "And you decided, this is who I am?" Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "You decided that for yourself," she said. Jake, standing near the galley, felt a chill move through him. Not from the temperature, from the precision of it. There was no wasted language, no emotion clouding the message. Just truth, delivered clean. Melissa shook her head slowly, but it wasn't denial anymore. It was recognition arriving too late. "I've trained dozens of crew members," she said. "I've enforced policy, protected passengers, kept flights running safely for decades. That has to count for something." "It does," Brooks said. His voice was steady, not unkind. "But it doesn't erase what happened today." Melissa closed her eyes briefly. That was it. No defense left. No argument strong enough to stand. When she opened them again, they moved back to Evelyn. There was something different there now. Not fear, not anger. Something quieter. Regret. "I didn't see you," she said. The words came out slowly, like they had weight attached to each syllable. "I saw what I expected to see." Evelyn watched her. That, finally, was honest. "And what did you expect?" Evelyn asked. Melissa hesitated, but this time she didn't run from it. "Someone who didn't belong," she said. The cabin held still again. Jake glanced down at his hands, then back up. The couple in the back didn't move at all. Even the distant hum of the aircraft felt quieter, like it was listening. Evelyn nodded once. "That's the part that concerns me," she said. "Not that you made a mistake, that you had a template ready." Melissa let out a breath that sounded more like something leaving than something arriving. "I thought I was protecting the environment," she said. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "You were protecting an idea," she corrected. Melissa's brow tightened. "What's the difference?" Evelyn's voice remained calm, but there was a sharper edge now, something more deliberate. "One is based on reality," she said. "The other is based on comfort." The words settled deep. Melissa's gaze dropped again, because she understood. Not all of it. Not perfectly. But enough. Jake stepped back into the conversation, his voice quieter than before, almost reflective. "We're trained to notice patterns," he said. "But sometimes we forget to question where those patterns come from." Evelyn glanced at him briefly. There was a flicker of acknowledgement there. Brooks straightened slightly, reclaiming some of the structure of the moment. "Operations is aware," he said. "They're escalating this to executive review immediately." Melissa gave a small, hollow laugh. "Executive review," she repeated. "That's one way to put it." Her eyes shifted back to Evelyn. "You already made your decision, didn't you?" Evelyn didn't answer right away, because the answer wasn't simple, not in the way Melissa wanted it to be. "This isn't about deciding your future," Evelyn said finally. "It's about revealing your present." Melissa absorbed that, slowly, painfully, because it meant the outcome wasn't created in this moment. It had been building long before it. She looked around the cabin one last time, at Jake, at Brooks, at the passengers who had seen everything without saying a word, then back at Evelyn. And for the first time since this began, she didn't try to explain herself. She didn't try to fix it. She just stood there, in the truth of what had happened. And in the silence that followed, everyone understood something without needing it said. This wasn't just one person's fall. It was a mirror, and it had reflected more than anyone in that cabin was prepared to face. No one spoke when it ended, not because there was nothing left to say, but because everything that mattered had already been said. Melissa stood in the aisle, no longer holding on to rank, no longer hiding behind protocol. Just a person now, stripped of position, stripped of certainty. What remained was quieter, heavier, harder to carry. Captain Brooks turned slightly toward Jake. "Arrange ground transport for Ms. Grant," he said, voice steady, procedural again, but not detached. "She's not continuing on this flight." Jake nodded once. No hesitation. Melissa didn't react. Not to the words, not to the finality. She just stood there for a moment longer, like her body needed time to understand what her mind already had. Then, slowly, she reached up and smoothed her jacket again. The same motion as before. But this time, it meant something different. Not control. Closure. Her eyes moved to Evelyn one last time. "I hope," she said quietly, voice no longer defensive, no longer searching, "that whatever comes from this actually changes something." Evelyn held her gaze. "It already has," she said. Melissa nodded. Not agreement. Acceptance. Then she turned. Each step down the aisle felt deliberate, measured, final. The distance between her and the front of the cabin stretched longer than it had minutes ago, not physically, but in everything that had shifted between those points. Jake stepped aside to let her pass. He didn't look away this time. Neither did she. The cockpit door remained closed. The cabin remained still. The passengers remained silent. But the silence had changed. It wasn't tense anymore. It was settled. Melissa reached the exit and paused, just for a second, her hand resting lightly against the frame. Then she stepped out. Gone. The door closed behind her, with a soft, controlled seal. And just like that, the space she occupied was empty. Captain Brooks exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that marks the end of something difficult. He turned back to Evelyn, posture straightening again, though the edge in his authority had softened. "Dr. Carter," he said, "we'll proceed when you're ready." Evelyn nodded once. No drama, no declaration. She reached for her seatbelt, pulled it across her lap, and clicked it into place. The sound was small, but it carried. Final. Jake moved quietly down the aisle, completing checks that should have been done minutes ago. His movements were more careful now, more aware, like something invisible had been placed into his hands, and he didn't want to drop it. The couple in the back exchanged a glance, then settled back into their seats. Not as spectators anymore, just passengers again. But something in their expressions had shifted too. Subtle, lasting. Captain Brooks returned to the cockpit. Moments later, the engines came to life. Low at first, then building. A controlled rise in power that filled the cabin, steady and undeniable. The aircraft began to move, rolling forward with quiet precision, leaving behind the stillness of the tarmac. Evelyn looked out the window. The runway stretched ahead, long and clear, uninterrupted. She didn't touch her cheek again. Didn't need to. What had happened wasn't something that needed to be revisited. It had already done its work. The plane picked up speed, faster, stronger, until the ground beneath them disappeared, and they were airborne, above everything that had just taken place, but not separate from it, because some moments don't stay where they happen. They follow, they shape, they remain. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again, her expression unchanged, steady, certain, not satisfied, not emotional, just clear. And somewhere beyond this flight, beyond this morning, beyond this single moment, something larger had already begun to shift. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you that respect should never depend on appearance, take a moment to like, subscribe, and comment 3 words. Stay respectful always.